All right. Can you all hear me?
Oh, yeah.
This is my first talk holding a microphone. Ooh. Hey, thank you, Brandon, Seth, and everybody at Shield Arms for putting this together. This is the first annual event, and I think we're off to a good start. And are y'all having fun at it? How many people are just getting here like tonight? I'm trying to get a feel for you as an audience. How many people are from Montana? Okay. All right, that's kind of what I figured. How many people here are preppers? Consider yourself a prepper. All right, good, that's better, because that means I have something to talk to you about today. And then finally, how many people here are Christians? Excellent. All right, I needed to get a feel. I didn't get to talk to enough of y'all while we were here. How many people, last question, how many people know who I am before I came here? Because I never know that either. All right, so then you get the abbreviated version. I'm not going to bore you. I was born to a family of CIA parents. I grew up overseas. I met my wife when I was 6 weeks old. My father gave her her baby shots because she had a very similar upbringing that I did. We met in college. I went in the Army. We married. Infantry officer, and then I went into special forces, then I went into national intelligence, then I got out and worked for the government for a while. During that time, I became a pastor. Also, after about 10 years of working for the government, post-retirement, I figured out there's real money in the civilian sector, and I became a contractor. Now, that may sound cool, but it was with the oil and gas industry, and so I did that for a few years. And then we started Shofar Mountain, which is an off-grid neo-pioneer community, and that's been taking all our time since then. I, of course, run Viking Preparedness on YouTube, Patreon. I'm an author. I have a book. My wife also wrote a book, and that's me in a nutshell. That's about all you have to know. There'll be questions and answers later. I'll answer almost any question, I think. Today's talk is on prepare for chaos, and I think it's worded WROL, SHTF, Tiawaki, whatever, prepare for chaos. And when I say that, understanding the terms that I'm using, post-apocalyptic world, the end of the world as we know it, SHTF, those are all events that I think are very possible in the relatively near future. Now, truth in advertising, I've been saying this since about 1984. And, here we are, and we're in Montana, and we're free, and we're doing what we want to do, so praise the Father for that. Since we have a pretty good biblical base here, it also includes tribulations. And I happen to be one of those people that think we are on the cusp of what's commonly referred to as end times. And that's just because of the way I see the world going. Things that never happened before are happening now, and I don't intend to dwell on that too much. So what would be the causes of WROL, Tiawaki, those things? What would be the causes of that? Does anybody have an idea what could cause that type of situation?
Financial collapse.
Financial collapse, that's a big one. Y'all ever see Doomsday Preppers? Oh, wow, like nobody. We're busy living life. They always make the people they feature on Doomsday Prepper say, we are preparing for whatever, an economic collapse, a coronal mass ejection, whatever. They don't necessarily believe that. They're just having them say that. But financial collapse is a thing. War is a thing. Does anybody think there's a possibility for World War III to affect the homeland? I think in the next 72 hours, we could see some really interesting things. I did a video today where I said, I think the Black Swan event could be if Turkey gets involved, because Turkey's been making funny noises. There's clearly thoughts in the government, amongst people, about the potential for a civil war type thing. The government's preparing for one. People are preparing for one. My common response to people is, who are you going to fight? I mean, what's your target? Oh, well, I don't know, them. But that is a potential that kind of stuff could happen. Is there a potential for famine? Yeah, have you guys seen what they're doing? I mean, I'm starting to sound like a tinfoil hat person. But have you seen what they're doing to the food? My daughter just came back from France. She spent a month in France writing a book. And she said the food in Europe is so much better than the food here. And they don't allow a lot of American food to come into France because of all the garbage we put into our food. Used to say, if you go into the grocery store, kind of shop around the edge, dairy, fruit, veg, meat. But anymore, the stuff they're putting in that is terrible. And there's, mad cow disease, hoof and mouth disease. There's all these different diseases going through the animals. In our area, you can't breed elk or deer, and they have, what's that called, SK? Chronic wasting disease. Deer have chronic wasting disease. And, if you see enough coincidences, it starts feeling like enemy action. And it's like the food source is potentially in trouble. People worry about EMP or a coronal mass ejection shutting down the electrical grid. Congress evidently commissioned a study on what would happen if somebody popped an EMP over the United States. And they came to the conclusion, this is them, not me, that within 1 year, over 90% of Americans would be dead. That's horrific. And if you come to that conclusion, what are you doing about it? I mean, if I came to the conclusion, this action is going to kill 90% of my family in the next year if it happens, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure I'm ready for that action. Weather's a thing. I don't believe in human-caused climate change, but climate's changing. Things happen. How many people here got vaccinated for COVID? But that was a thing, right? The pandemic that happened. They're talking about another one coming. They're talking about it a lot. I think it's interesting that if another pandemic comes, what if it's real? Like, what if it really is a pandemic? Because there's a bunch of people now, kind of like y'all, us, who are predisposed not to take any vaccine, not to take any medical aid. It's like it's fake. What if it's not? How do you know? It's a real thing. Pandemics have killed people forever. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, right? Famine, war, plague, and then the white horse. I have anarchy, aliens, zombies, whatever. Those are causes. But the causes don't really matter. It doesn't matter what causes a situation that we find ourselves in, that we end up in. What actually matters is what are the effects of that causation. It doesn't matter why when you're experiencing no food in the grocery stores. It doesn't matter why when your social credit score is too low or you're on the bad boy list and you can't go to the bank. In Canada, they weren't letting people bank who didn't get the vaccine. 15 years ago, people would have said that was impossible. And so there are some causes that we should probably some effects that we should understand. And the first thing is, in any kind of big, disastrous situation, you are going to be on your own. You and your people, if you have people, which I'll probably address while I'm talking to you. But you're going to be on your own to solve life's problems. And people are like, yeah, I know that. But I don't think people really think about it. I don't think they think about it deeply. Power. Power goes out. What if the power goes out and it doesn't come back on? What's your plan for that? What if you can't go to the grocery store because either there is no grocery store or you, again, don't have the right social credit score or you don't look the right way or have the right ID or have the right mark on your hand or in your forehead and you can't go to the grocery store? You're on your own for food. How many people here are on septic? Septic tank? That's good. That's really good. Because if you're on a sewer, that's a bad thing if the sewer system quits working. And you'll be on your own for dealing with that. You'll be on your own for police. I suspect most people here are fine with that. It's fine. I was talking to Brandon, and there's no police force in Big Fork, and the area is covered by the sheriff's deputies. And there's probably, I don't know this part, but I bet you per square mile, there's not that many deputies, right? And so you're already on your own without police, and you're like, I'm good. But you'll be on your own for fire. You'll be on your own for EMS. And we're going to get to weather. But fire in this area is a really big thing. That's a potential huge problem that nobody in one of these events will be coming to help you if that happens. I said groceries, hospital. How about this? No hardware store, no feed store, no hay that you can go buy. from Farmer Bob or from the co-op or something like that. No gun store. Brandon's like, I beg to differ there, PJ. But generally speaking, for most Americans, these things are going to be unavailable. You're going to have what you have. It's going to be a come-as-you-are event. And if you have, I'm going to sound like Camilla. You'll have what you have, but you won't have what you don't have, which means you'll have what you have. But you're going to have what you have, and what you don't have when the event happens, that's it. That's you. This is what you have to work with. Isolation. During the COVID, whatever people call that, we locked our gate at Shofar Mountain. When it first started, we were looking at it, and I said, all right, if you're going to be here, you got 48 hours to get here, and we're locking the gate, because we didn't know what we were dealing with initially. And we locked our gate for, I think, 2 months. Nobody in, nobody out. Isolated. I loved it. I'm an INTJ. I liked being alone on my land. It was good with just the Shofarians. But some people hated that, and evidently it hurt children in school, and it gave people mental issues or whatever. But isolation is going to be a thing in any kind of big event. There's going to be anarchy. There's going to be no rule of law. And right now, there's police science, which I don't claim to be studied in, but they have a number. For every 100,000 people, citizens, we need X amount of police to police that population. And they base that on a generally law-abiding population. When the population figures out, why am I obeying the law? You need more police, but the police at that point are staying home. Do y'all remember Katrina and how some of the police acted during Hurricane Katrina? And so there's going to be anarchy, and there's going to be warlords. Warlords is the natural state of the human history. We have warlords now. They're called mayors and town councilmen and chiefs of police. And we were talking to you about that one police department. It's like, come on, they're warlords. Sure, they have a badge and they have color of authority, but they are in charge. Well, when the world goes crazy, they're going to have more power, more relative power. I am fond of saying there's 4 things that are going to get you in an event. Does anybody know what they are? All right, good. Starvation, people behaving badly, medical issues, and weather. If something's going to get you in this grid down Tiawaki situation, it's going to be one of those 4 things. I have notes. Starvation. You are not going to have access to grocery store. You're not going to be able to go buy groceries. Depending on what the event is, you might not have a garden. Nuclear winter or whatever. It's possible you won't. How many people here have a garden now? That's good. Everybody who didn't raise your hand should work on that for next year. It's not going to be a farmer's market. People behaving badly. When people realize that this isn't going to get better. See, that's the thing about Americans. Americans are really good at helping each other. If there's a huge winter blizzard that comes through or something, you're going to go check on the old lady down the street and make sure she's plowed out. If something happens with a pandemic, everybody's going to check on each other. And people are generally well behaved in America. But that's because most things like that are regional. And people know subconsciously a couple things. They know, 1, help is coming from the rest of the country to help us. And number 2, they know that this is going to end. And there will be an accounting. There will be a reckoning. And so I can't act the fool and go crazy because cameras. But when people realize, the world has just changed forever and things aren't good, people who were normally what we would all call good people are going to become bad people. Not everybody. But some people are. In any given population, there's a certain percent of people who are bad people, right? When the world goes crazy, people are going to go crazy a little bit. And I have met people, and if you have had conversations with people, and hopefully you're not one of these people, they say things like, hey man, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to take care of my family. And if you dig into that a little bit, it gets ugly, and it gets scary, what they're talking about. We had 2 people I worked with. One was an Apache helicopter pilot. The other one was a nationally ranked black powder silhouette shooter, shot 1,000 yards black powder at silhouettes. They were both skilled with arms. They both had lots of guns. They both told me in no uncertain terms, if something like that happened, they were going to kill people and take their food. I brought pictures of them home, blew them up to 8 by 10, and schooled my family on it because I traveled a lot at the time and I could very possibly be gone when something happened. And I said, after an event, if either one of these people shows up at the door, shoot them on the step. Because if you give them an inch, they got you. There are people like that. These were good, upstanding American Army officers who are good people. They weren't good people inside. Just scratch them a little bit, and it's ugly. It says in the Word, the love of many shall wax cold. It will grow cold. People are going to lose the love for man, and they're going to justify it, saying that they had to do what they had to do to protect their family. Medical. Starvation, people behaving badly, medical. Y'all look pretty good, actually. You should see where I come from, further east. Americans are unhealthy people. We just really are. Most of us, Americans, not you, most of us are overweight. A lot of Americans are on drugs. Maybe some of y'all are, and I'm not talking illegal drugs. I'm just talking you're on drugs that you need, and if you lose access to those drugs, your health declines rapidly. That's a really real thing. How many people here know CPR? CPR works until the paramedics get there and shock the person and give them shots and get them to the hospital with care. CPR all on itself with no follow-on care rarely works. How many people here know how to carry a tourniquet? Know how to put on a tourniquet? How many people here have a tourniquet on them? Good. So you come across somebody who's grievously injured, they're spurting blood, you put that tourniquet on in less than 18 seconds, you stop the flow of blood. Awesome. Or you come across somebody with a chest wound, you put an Asherman chest seal, or you fabricate an occlusive dressing and you put that on them. Cool. Now what? Now what? What are you going to do now when there's no hospital? What are you going to do now when, if there is a hospital, the parking lot looks worse than that and there's people stacked out in the hallway? It's a real thing. Medical. Don't worry, I'm not just giving you problems. We're going to go to potential solutions here. I'm just trying to set the stage. Any kind of grievous event, and I feel it in my heart that there's something coming. It's why I'm here. Honestly, this was a pretty long drive to get here, and I figure if I can reach like 3 people that then go on and reach other people, then we as a people are better off. Any kind of event is going to be full of stress, just stress. Most people react negatively to stress. It'll be emotional stress, psychological stress, physical stress, having to actually do physical work, spiritual stress, and that's going to affect people's health. There's going to be heart attacks, there's going to be strokes, there's going to be all kinds of things. I already talked about meds running out. Weather. Y'all know about Murphy, right? Murphy was here. Murphy's like that little problem demon that shows up when you're trying to do something. Well, I like to say Murphy has a gang. And so there was just an EMP or Wall Street just collapsed or a pandemic's going through the land. And then we get a blizzard, or then we get a hurricane, or then we get a spate of tornadoes. He comes in many things. It's not just one thing that happens. And again, in this area, I put forest fire in weather. It's got to fit somewhere. But it's like a natural, very dangerous thing. Forest fire is a real thing here. And so that could happen also. I have a lot of people on my Patreon channel, and I encourage people to get survival retreats and to get with people and to set things up. And people are like, and I tell people, once you have your bug out location, people say, I live in my bug out location. No, you don't. You live in your retreat, perhaps. But you should always have a place to go. You should have a plan and a place to go, because what if this is our retreat, and this is actually kind of nice looking, right? We all live here, and it's like, yeah, we're going to go through the apocalypse right here. This is cool. We're going to put a garden there. We got sheep over there. And a forest fire is coming. Well, I guess I'll just die right here. Well, and why are you storing food? Why are you growing sheep? Why are you doing anything if you're just willing to roll over like that? It's because the real reason is the emotional angst of trying to think, I've built this place, I've poured everything into it, and I have to leave here is too much for people to contemplate. That goes back to the stress, the psychological stress that's going to happen. It's going to hurt people. You all have another weather event that could possibly affect you here, and I'm not sure about the specifics because I'm not personally that concerned with it. Yellowstone. You know, it says in the Word that there will be earthquakes in diverse places. Well, when that was written, there were earthquakes in diverse places, if you want to be honest about it. There's earthquakes going on all over the place. So clearly, that's not what it means. Clearly, it means there will be earthquakes in diverse places. And I think New Madrid could let go. I think Yellowstone could let go. I think the Ring of Fire could let go. How does that affect us here if this is where we live? What I encourage you to do is sit down with your family or with your crew. That's what I call your team, your mag, your group, whatever. And just free range what things could actually hurt us if the system fails. Or if the system has a big hiccup, what things could hurt us? Well, the grocery stores could be closed, or the road could be closed in the town, and because of that, we won't have this. Or how do people heat here? How do you heat your homes? Wood, propane. It's not like gas or oil or anything. Whatever, if you don't have access to that, it gets cold in Montana in the winter. How are you going to heat your home, right? You have to have plans for that. You have to think that. And sit down and think about what can actually affect us and then rank order them. What's the most likely thing that's going to affect us? Right here. And then this is next, and then this is down here. And then once you identify these things that could actually affect you and yours and your life, start working on plans to mitigate those effects. What am I going to do now to make it easier for me to get through that? And I did this with my crew. And my crew is like a lot of prepper mags teams, things like that. You know, they have all the guns and all the gear, and you know, they like to shoot and they like to do all that stuff. And I asked them, I said, all right, what's going to get us if this event happens and we're all locked down here and we're doing the things that we talk about? And I just started putting things on a whiteboard. And they didn't know where I was going, but I was putting them in 3 columns. Because I used to say the 3 things that are going to get you is starvation, people behaving badly, and medical. That's when we came up with weather. Weather events started coming. And then when we looked at all that, I wrote those 4 categories above them. And then I talked to my crew in my location with what's going on where we are, and I said, out of these 4, which one's the one we have to worry about the most, really? Anybody want to take a guess what it was? What? Food. My crew all said right off the get-go, people behaving badly. I said, nope. First of all, we live where there's not a lot of people. Again, in any given population, there's a certain percentage of people who are bad and then a certain percentage who are going to turn bad. You increase your chance of running into a bad person if there's more people around. We live in a very sparsely populated area, 1. Number 2, it's hard to get to where we are. Number 3, we have a reputation in our greater neighborhood that we are a cult with guns and we will shoot you. Now, that's not true, unless you threaten us or something. But, I mean, it's really not true. I think we're pretty nice people. But that works for us. And so I said, nobody's going to come here, generally speaking, and threaten us. The biggest threat we have, my crew has, is medical. We have really overweight people. We have one guy that's had like 3 heart attacks and quadruple bypass surgery. We have people that are on drugs that they have to take. And it's like, it doesn't sound sexy, but the biggest problem we face potentially if this grid collapses is lack of medical care. And so there are steps then that we have to take if we identify that as our number 1 threat, and they're not sexy. It's not buying another Shield Arms AR-15 for us. It's doing other things, which we're going to get to. All right, the title of this talk is Prepare for Chaos. Once you identify the threats to you, it doesn't matter what they are to me. It matters what you perceive the threats are to you, and you got to take your time with that. You can't just do it tonight on the way home. You have to think about it and work your little sheet. You have to determine the ways to mitigate that, and you deal with, I told you this, the most likely first. So for starvation, I'm fond of saying the minute you crack open your long-term survival food supplies, the minute you crack that open, you start the stopwatch to your starvation. But the first thing we can do to mitigate starvation is quit eating out. Americans eat out a lot of meals a week. And because they eat out a lot of meals a week for convenience, for, whatever, they don't have the food in their kitchen. It's not there because they're not cooking. You're also wasting money eating out. You could make it better at home and with more money to buy Shield Arms stuff. But you should stop eating out so much, and you should start cooking at home, and you should have a very robust kitchen food supply. I was gonna say you gotta have a pantry like grandma, but I'm thinking I'm probably older than most of you, so you gotta have a pantry like great-grandma used to have. My grandma had a room probably 10 by 10 that had shelves all in it, and she had so much food in there, and that's just what made her feel comfortable because she came through the Depression. But she had a lot of food in her pantry, and we should start doing that as a people. And then the final one is you get to long-term food storage. The Shofarians have and I don't normally put this out a whole lot, but it has been out, so it's not like total OPSEC. We have a minimum requirement of 1 year food per person, per family. And the way we assess 1 year food is 800 pounds of wheat, rice, corn, or beans, any combination thereof, 800 pounds per person. That's basically 25 5-gallon buckets per person. That's our minimum requirement that we have. And my plan as a leader of Shofar Mountain is that we never crack those buckets. Never crack them, the long-term food supply. Because everybody has their kitchen, they have their pantry, they have their critters, which we're gonna get to, and I'm saving the buckets for that unforeseen emergency. Because again, once you open up that first container of long-term storage food, you're gonna get to the end of it. I don't care if you fill that building with food, that's a finite supply of food. At some point, you're gonna get to the end of that food, and then what? And so you have to solve that problem, and I've been talking to, I think, 2 people here already today that kind of think this. We need to become net producers of calories instead of net consumers of calories. One, from a preparedness standpoint, so that you can keep eating and feeding your people. But number 2, what they're putting in our food today, and I'm just becoming aware of this in the last 6 weeks. It's awful. My wife and I eat, until this trip, I used to eat like a instant oatmeal, Quaker instant oatmeal. I just pour hot water in the actual envelope, stir it up, and eat it real quick for breakfast. There's some weird Roundup stuff, and it's highest in Quaker oats than anything else. And we have a lot of it stored up. It's going away when we get home. We have to produce our own food. And that's why I asked who had a garden. You're gonna have to grow a garden. And it's not that weird. People were growing gardens like crazy in the 30s and 40s. 1930s, 1940s, less than 100 years ago, and they were largely eating out of their gardens. How many people here hunt? There's a lot of preppers who go, I'll just go out and hunt. In North America during the Great Depression, white-tailed deer were almost wiped out. They're easy to kill. They're ridiculously easy to kill if you cheat. I imagine elk are pretty easy to kill if you cheat and do it. And counting on that is not a great plan. You should know how to hunt. You should know how to forage food. You should know how to identify wild plants. My wife and I took a walk this morning, and y'all are blessed. Huckleberries? Come on. We're going by these trees of huckleberries, just eating them. If we lived here today, if we weren't doing this, we'd probably have a 5-gallon bucket of huckleberries that we would be canning and drying and doing that thing. Guys, you have that just available in your woods. That's cool. That'll probably still be there, but you should probably learn how to gather those and treat them and that kind of thing for longer term storage. Who's heard of the survival rule of 3s? You can live 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, 3 hours without shelter in an extreme environment. It's just kind of when you find yourself crashing your airplane in the side of this mountain and living, what do you have to do first, second, third? You can't go more than about 3 days without water. which means water's really important. And so I put that in the food and the starvation category, if you will. You have to have a plan for water. And water you can get 3 ways. You can drill it out of the ground, you can catch it basically from the sky, or you can go fetch it from a creek or a lake or whatever. That's about the 3 ways you can get water, but you should have a plan for that now. I served in the Balkans for a little while in the military, and they had, it was more than one, but where I was, they had what was called Sniper Alley. And it's this decimated city, there's no water coming through anybody's pipes, and down there at the end of that block, there was a broken pipe that was just gushing water. And so everybody would go there pretty much every day with whatever container they had to get water, to bring it home so they'd have water for the next day or so they could drink and live. And snipers would set up down the road, and when people scurried across the road, they'd shoot them. Kids, women, old people, they'd just shoot them. It was evil what was going on. It's dangerous to get water. Where do lions hunt? The watering hole, right? That's where all the prey's coming. They're all got to come get water every day. Let's just wait here. You have to have a plan for how you're going to secure your personal water. And if you have to go somewhere to get it, security is going to become a really big issue. There's bad people out there, and they're going to know people are coming for the water. And so you need to be careful, and you need to have a plan for that. I wanted 3x5 cards, but I didn't have any. All right, people behaving badly. I think in the prepper community, that's the one that lots of people focus on. You know, I've got my handgun, I've got my reloads, I've got my AR in my car, I got my shorty, I got my this, I got my shotgun next to the bed, because I'm ready for bad people. Anybody know what kuhimp means? I popularized the phrase. I clearly didn't invent it. Yeshua, Jesus did. Come out of her, my people, lest you partake of her sins and receive of her plagues. Talking about Babylon, but the Bible's written on a couple different levels. Each one is true. And one of the things about coming out of the built-up areas where everybody is you're getting away from that percentage of bad people or people who are going to be turned bad. And if you live in a rural area, rural people, number one, are generally more self-sufficient. So they're not going to have to kick in their neighbor's door to take their food, generally. And you're lessening your problems. But the biggest thing people can do is get rural. Move out from, I like to say, if you can have a pizza delivered to your house, you're not rural enough. You need to get out where they won't deliver a pizza to and start making a go of it there. I have what I call the 6 Ds of defense. But PJ, there's 7, there's 8, there's 4. I mean, anytime you make a list, you know, the 5 people on YouTube, I used to do a lot of YouTube videos. I don't do a lot anymore. They love it when you do lists. The 3 things of survival, the 3 things you need to make it through Armageddon, the 5 things. So one time I did a video on the 6 Ds of defense, and they are detect, deter, divert, delay, defend, defeat. You have a place. I don't care if it's an apartment or it's a ranch, you know, 2 sections of land and a ranch house in the middle of it. You have a ranch, or you have a place that you live. And the first thing you want to do if somebody's trying to do you harm is know that they're trying to come do you harm, right? So you have to detect that they're coming. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I could talk for an hour on it. Once they're coming, you want to try to deter them. You want to make them go somewhere else. Have you all heard about home security where you don't have to make your house Fort Knox, you just have to make it harder to get into than your neighbor's house? Because predators go after easy prey. And so I don't want to go after this guy. He may shoot me. He looks like he's ready to shoot me. I'll go after this lady because she doesn't look like she'll shoot me. And so you're trying to deter them from coming. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. If they are still coming, you want to divert them. You want to move them off, delay them, slow them down. The reason we slow them down is to give ourselves more time to prepare for what's going to happen next, which is actually defend your place. You're in a fight of some kind with the people. And then my final thing is defeat. Because if you beat them off in a grid down situation and they run away, they're coming back stronger and smarter. So my personal philosophy is finish it so that you don't have to deal with those people again. But it's something for you to think about for you. And the ways you can do that are vast. But fencing is the thing. Gates are a thing, and you can have more than just a perimeter fence. You can have interior fence and slow people down coming across your driveway fence. You can have all kinds of things. I'm also fond of telling people, if you have absolutely no military experience in your group, you need to get some. I mean, it's just the bottom line. And a person who served as a private in the infantry knows things that survivalists who have all the kit don't really understand. And they just know it internally. And so find yourself somebody who served in the combat arms in the military and have them help you. Even if they don't join your group, they could give you advice on that. You have to consider things like, how are people going to get to my core? The core of my retreat, my house, my master bedroom, if I'm in there. What ways, what avenues of approach are they going to come? Sure, they could be rangers and scale the cliffs on the back part of your property, but the reality is, they're probably not. They're probably going to come the way you come when you come home from the store initially. They're going to come down the road and try to get through your gate and that kind of thing. But you should understand which way people who are behaving badly are going to approach you. Sensors, you've got electronic sensors, you have mechanical sensors, you have biological sensors. How many people here have like livestock guardian dogs or protection dogs? More of you should raise your hands because you should have these things. A good dog is a wonderful thing. They can let you sleep at night. You're gonna have to sleep sometime, which is another reason we need people. I have another phrase I use: do not try to defend your house from the mailbox. If you are saying, all right, here's my yard, and there's bad people coming, so I'm gonna go out there behind this big tree in my front yard, and I'm gonna defend my house. If you, God forbid, have to defend your house at that point, because there's a marauding group of 3 pickup trucks, 4 guys in each one coming to do bad things, if you're shooting at them, what are they doing? They're shooting back. Where are those bullets going? Into everything you love and care about behind you. Right? So you don't defend your house from your mailbox. You have to defense in depth. You have to get out. And again, that's another long talk. You are going, people hate this, preppers hate this, you're gonna need people. You're gonna need people. If you wanna put one person that can stand here and look down the road both ways to see if people are coming, you're gonna need 3 people for that one job, because that guy who's on guard duty has to eat, has to sleep, has to make food, has to take a shower sometime. So you put somebody else there. You can't run 12-hour shifts indefinitely. How many people have been on 12-hour shifts, like for work or something? Could you do that under a stressful situation forever? Well, if I had to, PJ, I would. Yeah, you would, but it's less than ideal. So for every position that you have for security, and you're all gonna have to sleep sometime, I gotta sleep. What if you're sick? What if you're the wife and your husband who's in charge of security? I know that's sexist, but let's just say it is. What if he's sick? What do? You need people to cover for you. And some of us are starting to get older. And what I'm starting to figure out is when we get older, I'm not as strong as I was when I was 30. It's amazing. It's a shocker. Y'all will find out when that happens. It's like, it's good to have people to lift heavy things. I used to be able to carry railroad ties one at a time when I first moved to Shofar Mountain. I need help now carrying a railroad tie. Having people is a good thing. And so we like to think that we're independent, rugged Americans, and I don't need anybody, and I don't like most people anyway, because I don't have to like them, because I can live my whole life sitting at my computer and not having to deal with anybody else. And we've lost the ability to communicate. You were telling me about, Brandon, about, what's the motto of Scald? Every cup a story. We've lost the ability as humans to sit down with each other and have a conversation. And part of that is, you look like you and I could get along, but I bet you there's something you think or believe that I don't. Well, the way we are as Americans now, let's say you think everybody should wear light hiker boots. And I'm like, that's a stupid idea. Everybody knows you're supposed to wear running shoes. All the hikers on the Appalachian Trail are wearing running shoes now. I don't want to talk to that guy, because he's not exactly like me. And people do that because you can go online and find people who believe exactly like you believe. Except here's the reality, they're not real. They're not flesh and blood. I have 40,000 friends on Facebook. No, you have no friends because you spend all day in your house looking at your phone. We need to get back to the ability to communicate, to accept different ideas from people and still communicate and let things go that don't really matter. But we've lost that, and so we need to work on that. The 3-to-1 ratio, those people, the 3-to-1, okay, I'm gonna let my son-in-law and my daughter and Uncle Bob come move in with us. They'll help do the things. You gotta feed them. You gotta care for them. You have to have bed down for them. You have to have medical stuff for them. And all of a sudden, the problem set becomes a little bit bigger. But the thing is, it's all doable if you do it now. Right now, we can go buy anything we want. You wanna buy another bed? You could go buy another bed this week. I mean, okay, I gotta get it at Goodwill. So what? Go get a bed at Goodwill. You could do that. After the event, you won't be able to. Medical. What do you think the most important thing for improving our ability to survive medical problems is? Anybody have an idea?
Physically fit.
Get fit. You all actually look pretty fit compared to the people I talk to usually and see. People hate hearing that. You need to work your body. You need to start running. And there's only two things. It's like the magic formula, right? Diet and exercise. You can't exercise your way out of a bad diet, right? If you go home and eat ice cream every day, you're gonna have to do something else, right? You're gonna have to eat better. But the number one thing we could all do is get fitter. And even if you're Brandon back there who's doing BJJ and is super fit, he can get fitter. You can get fitter. You can get stronger. You can get faster. You can get more flexible. You can have more endurance. You could be an 80-year-old who walks with a cane. Ooh. You can get fitter. Are you going to be doing pull-ups with weights strapped to your feet? Probably not. But you can get fitter than you are, which will help your overall health. I won't make you raise your hands on this one, but many people, and I'm starting to find this out as I get older and my friends all get older. It's like, I told Kate, I am not going to be one of those old people that sits around and goes, oh, my whatever's acting up, or oh, this, or oh, that. But as you get older, you start, there's a lot of wear and tear on some of these bodies. Get things addressed now. If you have bad teeth, if you got that one tooth that you know is a cavity, but you don't want to go to the dentist, man, go to the dentist. Dental care has become pretty good. And it's relatively painless anymore, as opposed to after event when that thing is flaring up and it's abscessed and it's. How many people have my book? On the cover of my book, there's a family, a picture of a family. They were in my church when I wrote the book. And the woman in the book worked in an orthodontist office. And believe it or not, I turned my whole church into preppers, and we formed like this big crew. And I told Paulette, that was her name, I said, Paulette, you're going to be the dentist for this group. She's like, all I do is tighten braces and answer the phone. I mean, I don't know any of that stuff. I said, Paulette, it's either you taking care of dental problems or it's me with a bottle of whiskey and a pair of vice grips. And she goes, I'll do it. And so she started gathering materials, and we sent her to a course and bought her books and things like that so she could up her knowledge. But wouldn't it be better if we just got that done now at a real dentist with modern materials instead of having Paulette do it the best she could do? You have a bad knee, you have a bad leg, you have a bad hip, you have a bad whatever. Get that stuff fixed now while you can get it fixed so you're not dealing with it after the event. Gather supplies. How many people here, you might not want to answer, but you should, have more than 2 tote bins full of medical supplies? That's good. That's good. I'm surprised. You should take advantage of the opportunity now to get medical supplies. All the shofarians have what we call a bare IFAK. It's basically a glorified gunshot wound kit, right? And we all have them in our vehicles, and that's great. It has really good stuff in it. How many people here have been a paramedic or been at the scene of a car wreck and watched the paramedics work? You watch one car wreck. On the side of the road, there's injured people, there's crashed cars. I was a volunteer firefighter for 10 years. I saw a lot of car wrecks, more car wrecks than fires. There is so much bandage material and wrappings laying on the ground after one car wreck. And when those people get to the emergency room, all of that stuff comes off and new dressings get put on. And then as they're recovering, those dressings are changed every day, sometimes more than once a day. It is a prodigious amount of supplies that are required to deal with a bloody injured person. And one little first aid kit isn't going to do it. We have lost the ability as a people to do home nursing. It used to be all the women knew how to take care of fevers and people having diarrhea and people bedridden for 3 days and knew how to change the sheet under a person and treat all these things. We don't do that anymore. We just go to the hospital and have medical professionals do it. In addition to gathering supplies, you need to gather knowledge. Get books on nursing, old school nursing and things like that, if you don't know how to do it. If you do know how to do it, good. It is amazing to me that ambulances throw away perfectly good gauze and gloves and everything else because there's an expiration date on it. I'm telling you, gauze doesn't suddenly become unsterile at the expiration date, but they'll get rid of it. And if you have a Boy Scout troop or a church or whatever, and you say, hey, we'll take all that stuff off your hands, they'll give you tote bins full of it. And then you can be supplied not only to help yourself, but to help the community or your neighbor or the person down the street who didn't think about this. And so gather medical supplies now. Gather written material. Everybody's seen the movie where it's a cowboy movie and somebody gets shot and they come carrying them in and there's a beautiful dining room table with crystal and a tablecloth and a little candelabra, and what do? Because it's very dramatic. And they throw the person on there and they give them something to bite and they start digging bullets out of them or whatever they do. Wouldn't it be better to have already thought this through a little bit and have a sick room or a clinic, or this is our spare bedroom, but if we have to, we're going to turn it into the isolation bay, or where we treat somebody who's got a fever or something like that. And with a little bit of forethought now, you could have a really good thing later. At Shofar Mountain, we're building a clinic. We don't intend to use that clinic today. If somebody gets sick today, we'll go see a real doctor. But if you don't have access to a real doctor and we need to treat somebody, we're going to have a whole building. It's about 18 by 40 that's set up like a clinic. It's something you can think about and do. I told you about Paulette. If you have medical people in your area, you should recruit them. You should be nice to them. You should get them on your side, or at least the ability to go see them. Anybody know it's on all the movies. I don't know if it's true or not. Who does the mafia use for doctors when they don't have a doctor and one of their guys gets shot? Veterinarians. Hey, a body's a body, a heart's a heart, blood goes like a blood goes. A veterinarian is a really good medical person to have on your team. Not only can they take care of their critters, they can take care of you if they have to. I'm not licensed to practice human medicine, I know, but you're the best we have, so go stitch him up. You can stitch up a horse or a dog, you can stitch up a person. Historically, not recently, but historically, in the warfare of humans, do you know what kills more people than arrows and spears and catapults? Disease. Disease is huge, and after an event, things you don't normally think about could very well rise up and get you. So you have to think about hygiene. If we all gathered here and we're going to survive the apocalypse right here, where are we pooping? I mean, it's a thing. Where are we going to wash our hands? Washing your hands is a thing. It's like a lot of people don't think about it. It's important. It's important. Soap is a wonderful thing. How many people here have made soap, like lye soap? Yeah, good number again. I don't care. We've made lye soap, my wife and I. I have a 55-gallon barrel that I call my Hygiene barrel. It is full of dial soap, toothpaste, toothbrushes, and stuff like that. Yes, I can make soap, but there's probably going to be 1,001 other things that I'm going to have to do, and dial soap is really cheap, right? You can just buy it right now, and every time you go to the grocery store, buy another 6-pack, come home and throw it in your tote bin or something like that. Being clean is going to be important. You have to have a plan for keeping your kitchen clean, or whatever you pass as a kitchen, what you're going to cook for the people or just cook for yourself on. How are you? Well, I've got a stack of paper plates for the event. Okay. And so after 50 days, or no, divide that by 3, after 15 days, 2 weeks, then what? You're going to have to wash things. There's a reason the Indians were nomadic. The Indians the Plains Indians, they'd come in, they'd set up all their teepees and stuff. They're humans. They eat, they pick berries, they poop on the ground. Well, then it gets saturated. They got to go, and they move. You know, there's a Bible verse for that. Did y'all know that? About pooping? I know, you didn't think you were going to hear this today. When you have to ease yourself, take your paddle, which is a little shovel, and go without the camp. It's talking about going without the camp, so you're not going to do it right here in the middle of the night because nobody's going to see you. You're going to go out there, and you're going to take your paddle, because why? Because you're going to bury it. Because we're not going to let that sit around the ground and everybody get cholera. I mean, it's simple things, and it's gross, and it's kind of basic, and it's kind of like, ew. But you got to think about this stuff because it's a real thing. SK is going to be our OSHA rep. OSHA is like Occupational Safety Health Administration. They have all these rules for work sites, and they come out and they give you fines and they shut down your job in construction. But here's the thing. We're out there after the event and we're working chainsaws because we got to get the wood stove fired up in the longhouse to keep everybody warm, and we're running short of wood because we didn't think this through. Somebody has to be out there to go, yo, you are not chainsawing in shorts and Vans. You know, it's just not going to happen. Oh, I got it, man. I've been chainsawing. No. Put these chaps on. Chaps are for girls. Put these chaps on. Put these glasses on. Put your helmet on. Because a chainsaw cut today is a trip to the emergency room and a cool scar and a cool story. After the event, it could be a death sentence. And so we have to make sure there aren't accidents. And I think you should assign someone in your group to walk around and go, hey, y'all pick that board up. Take those nails out of that board or pound them flat and move it out of the way so people don't trip. Somebody put a banister on this set of steps because old lady Johnson almost fell coming down them the other day. Because we want to prevent injuries for our people, but it's more than just, yeah, we need to be safe. You're going to have to assign somebody to do that. Here's another one that when I told my people this, my crew, it made people cross their arms. Like, they didn't like hearing it. Oh, and by the way, I was a pastor. I'm a retired pastor now. I was a pastor for 16 years. When you're up there preaching and you say something that affects the audience, they squirm. It's really interesting. The people actually squirm in their chairs. They don't realize they're doing it. So you can tell when you're having an effect. But I told my people this, and they didn't like it. We have food, we have a food plan, and the way we're going to run it is I'm putting 2 women in charge of distributing the food. We're going to do group meals. I'm going to have a brother over top of them just to settle any arguments for her. My wife's not going to be one of the people. Food's not fair. We're not all getting the same amount of food. We're not all getting 1 scoop of green beans and a scoop of mashed potatoes. Those young guys, those skinny young 20-year-old to 30-year-old guys that were out all day bucking wood and carrying wood in and moving rocks and digging holes, they're getting more food than the guy that sat at the ham radio all day taking in information who's already overweight. Life's not fair, but it becomes a medical issue. See, for us as Americans, food is a comfort thing, and it's nice, and we like it, and I love that scald burger that I had for dinner. But the reality is, what do you need to function? Because we have to think of the overall group. And so, dude, you sat on your butt all day. Hey, we value the work you did, but you're not getting as many mashed potatoes as Paul the lumberjack over here. Does that make sense? Who's going to enforce that? I am. It's like, hey, that's what they said. That's what we're going to eat. And we're going to have our medical people say, yep, this is how much people need to eat. And Bob's looking a little skinny. We're going to up his rations. How many people here actually treat your dogs like a well-oiled machine and look at how heavy and skinny your dog is and adjust their diet? Because we do. We have ridgebacks. Like when they start getting a little chunky, it's like we got to cut them back a little bit. When they get a little skinny, it's like we got to lift them up. You have to do the same thing with people. All right, weather. You guys actually have weather. Where I live in the Ozarks, weather's not a huge thing. There's tornadoes in some spots, but we have mild winters. Our summers are not awful, and so it's good. But here, it gets cold in the winter. If things go down, you have to have a plan, and then it gets cold normally. What if there's a blizzard? What if there's a blizzard when you don't have any access to supplies? You have to have a plan for that, and I think probably most of you do as far as clothing, because you look like outdoorsy kind of people, but how's your bedding? I see news stories all the time when the power goes out and it's winter, and 6 people died in Chicago. They froze to death in their house. There's absolutely no reason for anybody in North America to freeze to death in their house. You can all get in the same bed, put all the blankets on one bed, and nobody's going to freeze to death. It's just not going to get that cold here. But you have to have a plan for that, and you have to think about it. You have to think about cooking. You have to think about heating. And then there's event-specific weather events like tornadoes. How come hurricanes. How come every year during hurricane season the price of OSB and plywood goes up, which is usually right about the time I'm trying to build a new outbuilding or a barn? Because everybody in Florida and the South Gulf Coast, they all go out and buy OSB to put over their windows. And my thought is, what did you do with the OSB from last year? You know what they do with it? They throw it away. Like, it's $30 a sheet. Used to be $13. It's $30 a sheet. I'll throw it away. If I need more, I'll get it. I'll have room to keep it in my little house. But you got to think about, if you think about that now, it'll save you problems. Fire. How many people here are concerned about fire where you live? My dad lives in Oregon, in the mountains in Oregon. They had big fires there, I think 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago, and I was tracking. I found an app that showed where all the fires were. He lives on the side of a mountain with a river right there. The fire came up and crested the mountain where he lived, and they stopped it there. It was touch and go there for a while. Fire's a real thing. You should consider, I don't even pretend to tell you what to do here with these monster trees that you have. What we do is we clear well back from our buildings of trees, and then we thin our trees to 10 feet above the ground and clear the ground so that fire can't come through. But you should have a plan for fire, and you should do whatever steps you can take now to prevent fire. How many people have a fire extinguisher? How many people have a way to fight a fire on your land, like a pump truck or something like that? One of the things we're working on at Shofar Mountain is building a fire truck. I would love to have a brush truck. I can't afford one. But we're talking about building a fire truck so that if a fire starts over there, we can put it out over there. Things like that. Don't keep all your eggs in one basket. You know, preppers in America, they're big on buying stuff because we're Americans and we're capitalists and we have money and we like to spend it and we like to be consumers, and I want to buy my way out of a problem, and so we buy all the things that are going to help us survive. You should not have all those things in one place. I tell everybody, every American within the sound of my voice should have a duffel bag packed with a complete set of clothing and footwear for every member of your family, and it should not be in your house. You can keep it in your car, you can keep it in a detached garage, you can keep it in the barn, but God forbid there's a fire in February and you get out with your life in your pajamas and you're standing out there, and however cold it gets here in February, you can go somewhere close and get clothed. What about your guns? What about your food? What about your medical supplies? It shouldn't all be in one place. So, prepare for chaos. I have focused this entire time on physical preparations, things that you should do, things that you may want to consider, and I have been focusing on physical chaos. But we know that we fight not against flesh and blood, right? We're fighting a higher battle. Now, make no mistake, we have problems in the flesh with the flesh that we have to deal with. It's been the way of humankind. That's not the big battle, though. We still have to address that. We still have to do it. It doesn't make what I already said of no import. But our main fight is spiritual. The way I look at it and the way I phrase it, which might seem slightly blasphemous, but I don't think it is. I bought the ticket, and actually I didn't buy it. Jesus bought it with his blood for me. But I bought the ticket, and I want to take the whole ride. I want to see him coming back in the clouds. Am I? I don't know. That's up to him. But I want to last through that. But the bottom line is, I want to be one of the ones who are like, he pats me on the shoulder or head and says, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." That's the battle ultimately that I personally am fighting. If you have not, here's my call to worship, right? Or my altar call or whatever. If you have not yet established a relationship with Jesus Christ, he said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes unto the Father but by me." He's either a liar or a madman or a total figment of imagination. But if you believe he is, That's the only way. And if you have not yet established a relationship with the Father through Jesus Christ, I really encourage you, I exhort you, I extol you to do so. You have time now to get that right. Because none of this other stuff that I talked about matters if you survive physically and you lose your soul and you die spiritually. And if you take that step and you take that walk, then maybe I will see you out there. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them, I think. Yep.